Hello and welcome to Confidently Wrong, a show by regular dudes talking with confidence about content we have no right to speak about with any kind of authority, but do it anyway. I'm Wesley and Nakamura, and as always, I'm joined by award-winning director Brian Redondo and Savon Jones, aka Captain Bonnie. This is episode 112, and we visit Hyrule for an early first impression of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Just kidding. Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, which just released on Nintendo Switch. I'm confident that it's going to be the best show you've ever listened to, and well, hey, if it's not, you can always ask us for a refund.
Incredible!
Hello, gentlemen. How are we doing today? Are we recording? What is happening here?
I hope we're recording.
Hello, are we recording?
All right. Hopefully the levels are good. Do I sound good? Do you sound good? You guys sound good.
You always sound good, Wes.
Hey, I look good, sound good. That's how we're doing it. All right. Savon, will you try and sit in the middle of your camera for me? I haven't made a video yet in a while.
Gee, Mom.
Maybe one day I will, and then we'll want your beautiful face right in the center, not on the side.
I didn't get to brush my beard or nothing, so I don't want the people to see me in my most natural state. I look like Mr. Wendell right now.
Savon of the
a
Wild.
little bit of facial hair, not as much on purpose, more just I haven't shaved. It's been a slog the past month at the end of the school year, man.
Yeah, Wes, you usually kind of clean cut. You look a little like me. I kind of, I've just made the rough look my default, so people see me with the beard and scraggy, like, oh, that's just how Savon get down. But Wes, you look like a actual beaten down, downtrodden teacher. Because it's not like you got like I'm gonna just grow to Grizzly Adams. You have like the I need a cigarette after work. Yeah. The Ben Affleck smoking a cigarette meme. I'm talking about was Ben Affleck just smoking a cigarette, looking tired as hell. That's just you right now. You got the stubble. You look like, man.
Every teacher in May.
Right. Teachers stop shaving.
Counting down the days till the end.
Stop grooming.
My guy.
There's just like assorted coffee stains all over their every attire, no matter what.
Yeah. Hang in there,
big
boy.
I'm excited for the show. We're going to get to do a show on a new Zelda game for the first time in a bazillion years.
Oh, yes.
Has it been actually a bazillion years?
Yes. The definition of bazillion is...
How many years has it been?
6.
It's been 6 years?
It was 2018, right?
Damn, the pandemic really screwed up.
2017, okay.
Damn, the pandemic screwed up my time perception bad, though. That was over half a decade ago.
Two lost years.
Damn, son. All right.
So the last time we had a game on Switch for Zelda was Breath of the Wild. And Brian and Mike got me to play this game. I was up late trying to hustle through this game a couple years ago, and it was just, I think, magnificent, a masterpiece, a whole lot of fun. A brain tease. It was just like very involved and cool that you could do it in so many different ways. And so now we're back in the kingdom. I don't know, the land of Hyrule. This one is called Tears of the Kingdom, although we've been joking about it that it's Tears of the Kingdom, and now my brain forgot which one it was, and Savon's brain also forgot which one it was. So this is good times. So me and Brian have been playing the game off and on for the past week, kind of getting into it.
I'm on.
Off and on. That's bold. That's a bold
Brian
statement.
Brian is just on. He's not sleeping.
I'm playing right now.
And Savon hasn't had a chance to play it and may not play it. Savon, you had not convinced that this is the game for you yet. So Savon is actually going to lead us through the questions, make it interesting. Savon, take it away. What are we talking about here with Zelda and our disappearing Link?
Yeah, all right. So let's start with just some background info on the series, right? Well, let's start with this Breath of the Wild in general and then leading up to Tears of the Kingdom. What made the first game good, and, what does this new game bring to the table? There's some questions I have about how this game's different than the other, but just for people who maybe aren't familiar with the series, why is this particular duo of games, or why was Breath of the Wild so good? What made people like it so much?
I think I should answer first because my answer is not going to be good, and then Brian will have an actual good answer. So the first game...
How it normally is.
The first game was good, I think, because of the cooking. No, just kidding. I didn't really like the cooking. I think what made the first game really cool, and I think Brian said this on a podcast that we talked about this, was there was just so much customization. There were so many different ways to go about the game that it felt like you were having your own adventure that was unique to you and wasn't the same way that anybody else was going to play the game. And the game was so big and massive and had opened up like so much of your ability to explore that it just really felt like, yeah, there was an objective, there was a story there, but really what made it cool was, you know, you could go about that in your own way and on your own time and make the game feel like you were living in this actual land, right? This Hyrule land, or realm that made it feel really cool. And there were so many different puzzles, and like you could tell that they had just spent a ton of time building this game, and nothing felt reused or repetitive. It just all felt really like the game was leveling up with you, even though somehow you could do it in any order you wanted. Like it was just a very like well put together game, and they really thought about how you could explore this world in that way. So I think that's what made the first game really fun. It also made it daunting. It's just a huge game, and you know, if someone would have said like, hey, you can play this game for 25 hours or 40 hours or however long it took me and still not explore 1/3 of the map and not gain 1/3 of the abilities yet, but you know, that's what the game is, I might have been like, it sounds like too much to me, you know. So it was a lot. Brian, what do you think?
For context, like I have sunk over 200 hours into Breath of the Wild.
Oh my god!
Across 6 years.
How many hearts do you have, Brian?
I haven't. I don't think I've even maxed out. I think it's probably like around 20 or something like that.
Okay.
And there's still more to be had.
For context, you only need like 13 or 14 to beat the game.
I mean,
Brian
I think
has a lot of extra hearts here.
If you're really good, you could probably beat the game like right out the bat, which people have done on YouTube.
Yeah, that's what made the game.
That is part of the magic of the game. Like you could just go straight for the final boss and give it a go and roll the dice.
For normal people, that's not really how you play, though.
But for me, I think, you know, Wes, you hit the nail on the head, right? Like it's just a massive open world, and it feels like an open world. Like when we talk about open world in other video games, it's just like, oh yeah, you know, it's like a huge map and you can kind of go anywhere and do lots of things, but they don't really mean that you can go anywhere and do anything the way that you know, what that translates to in Breath of the Wild, where you can climb anything that you see in the game, right? Like part of what makes it so huge is that not only is it a large map, it's also a vertical map. Like the map is a topographical map because you can climb every mountain, every tree, every spire, and then jump off of these things and glide your way across this mammoth landscape. And then on top of that, you get some really great abilities that allow for a lot of different combinations and experimentation to the point where, like, you know, to this day, people are still making YouTube videos of what they've figured out how to do, right? Like they're messing around with electricity and metal boxes to electrocute a whole field of bad guys. You know, that sort of out of the box thinking, but just using the mechanics of the game to create, you know, a very fun sandbox that is unique to the person playing it, right? Just through their experimentation and their wildest imaginations of like, you know, if I combine X with Y, what is Z, right? So, you know, it's like the physics, it's the setting, it's the mechanics that are all so vast that really made Breath of the Wild quite a special masterpiece. And then so coming into Tears of the Kingdom, right, there's obviously a ton of hype because of how lauded Breath of the Wild is. And, you know, I think Tears of the Kingdom as a sequel really just ramps up those same ideas I talked about, right? Like suddenly the mechanics have gone from like 1 to 100 in the span of this of 6 years, in the span of the sequel, right? Like suddenly the combinations and permutations of what you can do are times 100, and it's like I didn't even know Hyrule could be this enormous, but suddenly it is. And yeah, I guess we'll go into what all those new mechanics are and how that changes the game.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk new mechanics, but before we get into the new mechanics, I want to take one super brief step back about just the history of the series, because these games have been around for literal decades at this point. Like, this is a 30-plus-year-old series, right? What are some of the Zelda games y'all played in the past, just in your lifetime?
So I'm not a big Zelda player. I would have played one of the original Zelda games, which came with a gold cartridge on the original NES. But I never owned
cartridge.
it. Ooh. Yeah, I would go. I a couple of one of my cousins had it, and another family friend had it. So I would play when we'd go to their house. But I mean, I was really young. I would have been 8 or 9 or 10, something like that. And I don't really remember the game at all, other than it was kind of not like Pac-Man, but you would get into these small rooms. You would have to explore the room or do something, fight a bad guy, whatever, and then kind of you'd move through a door and then you'd move into the next room. It was kind of like Among Us, it was that feeling like you were kind of in a smaller space, and it felt like you were more on a board game. And then I probably didn't play any other Zelda games until Breath of the Wild a couple of years ago. So there was probably a 30-year gap where I didn't understand anything about Zelda lore or Link lore or anything like that. I didn't play Ocarina of Time, which I think was a big entry into the.
That's that is the Zelda game.
Yeah, didn't play that. Didn't have any interest in it. So I am not a Zelda fan at all. I mean, I think this has been a new experience, a new way to open up a chamber of my heart, to a new game. So. That's my experience. I'm not going to proclaim to be a Zelda, head. I don't get into anything on Reddit on Zelda, nothing like that. Brian?
I'm definitely on the opposite side of that. I've played, tons of Zelda games.
Brian cosplay as Link every night.
He got his Link sock pajamas
that's
on.
The only way to play the game, Wes. Are you sitting there in your normal clothes?
Do you put the elf ears on every single time you play, or is that just a weekend thing?
That's a daily thing.
Okay.
That's a morning, afternoon, and night thing.
Don't leave the house without
into
him.
it. It's what I'm hearing.
That's a intimate time thing. It's how I get the Triforce up.
Yo, get this man out of here.
So I played the gold cartridge. I did not play the Super Nintendo versions because I didn't have Super Nintendo. But N64
Street Fighter 2 Turbo was amazing on that console.
I like.
Did you
Sonic
have Sega?
the Hedgehog.
What did you have?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But once
Three
N64 comes out,
my man.
there are two must-have games, right?
Yeah.
Mario 64 and then Zelda Ocarina of Time. And Ocarina of Time is when Zelda comes into the modern era. It becomes a 3-dimensional experience, and a phenomenal game. I think it is probably the first Zelda game where I was kind of old enough to understand how to even play it. And then I played Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword. I never played Majora's Mask. Link's Awakening, I played that, which is kind of a throwback game. And then there's also tons of Zelda likes out there, right? There's Tunic is kind of a riff on Zelda. Elden Ring is a huge riff on Breath of the Wild. And then there's Genshin Impact, which a lot of the kiddies are playing on their phones, right? That's a total knockoff of Breath of the Wild. So yeah, it's a series that I've always been really excited about, and I think one of the interesting things I've been reading about on the coverage for Tears of the Kingdom is they always talk about how Shigeru Miyamoto, the head honcho at Nintendo who came up with Mario and Zelda in the first place,
we're just gonna let him get away with saying
why can't I say
that?
his name like that? That's the correct pronunciation. It's how are you going to pronounce the lead of The Last of Us? His name is Pedro Pascal.
Right? Oh my God! Get this. Continue. What did Nintendo see?
So Miyamoto, unlike other video games that have a very on the rails charted path on how to play the game, he thought of Zelda as I have all these memories of hiking through the mountains as a child, and I want that kind of element of discovery in a video game. So in the first Zelda, you're left in in that 2D board game screen with 3 different paths. And that was groundbreaking at the time. Like, oh, which path are you going to go? And then they had all these secret dungeons. And so jump to Tears of the Kingdom, and we have that to the nth degree.
Nice. What I'll add is I got introduced to the Zelda series because I used to play a lot of Super Smash Brothers on GameCube. That was really my first real hardcore Nintendo system. So I played a lot of Super Smash Brothers, but then my history with the series was similar to yours, Brian. Like, I've played a good amount of the games. Like, I played a lot of the handhelds. So Wind Waker, Four Swords, Twilight Princess is probably my big dog favorite Zelda game. I played the hell out of that.
Oh, I love Twilight Princess.
I love Twilight Princess a lot. I played Spirit Tracks. I played Skyward Sword. I played a lot of the big Zelda entry series up until Breath of the Wild, which I've said before, I enjoyed, and everything great about the game y'all have said, I completely co-sign with. I'm just at a stage where the Zelda series isn't going to be that game that takes over all of my other games because of its depth. So while I appreciate what Breath of the Wild does, I have other games that already are like, this is my game that's going to be my time sink game that I really learned every tiny mechanic for. So I want to be clear on, like, none of this is a shot at the series. It's just a matter of taste and what games you have capacity for. But yeah, okay, so we talked a little bit about some of the other games.
Brian, are you reading that take to say, or that Savon is saying, like, there's not enough black people in Hyrule?
There's not enough there's not enough actual time in the day of, like, dude, I can put my effort into, like, really Apex and GTA, or...
Like, where's the minorities in this land?
Nah, I accepted that because it's Zelda. The bar is all over. Also, Zelda had a good job of having a bunch of, like... Well, that's a whole nother thing. No, we're not getting sidetracked. We talked about the history of the games. We played a lot. So let's go back to this new game, right? What is the biggest thing that has y'all sucked in this game right now? Like, everyone I know who's playing it, they're saying I've been up late. It's a time sink. I have other friends in other chats and people I know who are just like, yo, this game is amazing and I love it. And I was talking to Mike. Mike is having an amazing time about the game, right? I told him, hey, update me with your gameplay status stuff. What is reeling y'all in? What about this is like, man, I'm enthralled?
For me, it's very much the beginning of the game. So you're getting to explore how some of the new mechanics are working. I'm still actually, for the part that I'm currently playing in, I'm still actually on the kind of the training wheels area, right? The beginning part where they're teaching you how all the stuff works.
Of course.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean,
I ain't trying to shade you.
The same portion of that game, the comparable portion of that game, the training wheels area, I remember you getting really frustrated because you were stuck there for quite some time.
I remember that. And I wasn't playing the game. I was like, yo, Wes, like, what's going on, player? Because I even started playing it and I beat the prologue area like, it's not that hard.
I like doing all of the things.
You love exploring. I think that's what's happening.
Did you say he plays the games like a Roomba? Then you say he like explores dungeon areas like a damn Roomba, where he just goes grid formation up and down to just vacuum up every loot or item possible?
That was my Last of Us. Yeah, that was my Last of Us technique. But I can't tell you that I haven't in the shrines made sure I check behind the shrine area. When you get to the end, just to make sure there's not a treasure chest back there hiding. Because in the last game they would put a treasure chest back there.
I've done that.
But what's been sucking me in so far is just seeing how all of the new stuff works. So you don't have access to your hang glider right away. But you do have this is kind of a spoiler, but you get a new arm in the very beginning of the game, and so it comes with some new abilities. One of the first abilities that you're introduced to is called Ultra Hand, which I was telling Brian is not what you think it is.
Unless
and then
you're Wes.
There's a second ability which allows you to combine your weapons and your shield with different objects around the world. So like the first one they show you is like you can take a boulder and you can add it to your sword or to your axe or whatever and turn it into kind of a very big like atom smasher kind of weapon that you could just wield with a ton of like power. But it does look like you took a toothpick and smashed a marshmallow because it's got a little pointy knob on the end. It's a little bit silly, but what I'm excited to see is actually where that can take you, because my buddy, who's quite further in the game, he's been staying up till 5 a.m. playing the game every night. I got to see his gameplay, and he had some kind of like dragon head statue attached to his shield, and it turned into a flamethrower.
Oh yeah.
Oh my goodness, like the possibilities here seem really like ridiculous, and I'm just excited to see like, oh, okay, like what can you do with that? Like, can you use that as a way to like cook your food? Can you use that as a way to like defeat enemies or disable them? Is there a possibility of using that as like an updraft for your glider? I don't know. I mean, there's all kinds of things you could do here.
The answer is probably yes to all of that, unironically.
Wes has only scratched the surface. He is at the tip, the tiniest tip of this massive iceberg that is going to sink the Titanic that is your sleep schedule.
So
that was nice.
So that's the part I'm really like into, is just like seeing where all of this goes and what new things have they added, because while a lot of things were possible in Breath of the Wild, I think by the end or by the middle of it, you're starting to feel like, okay, I kind of feel like where the limits on this are, and how this is supposed to go. And you start getting good with a particular set of weapons that you use and abilities that you use, and how you use them in fights, like whether you're using more arrows or whether you're using more of your melee, or stealth, whatever. And you start to get into a pattern. But I think now's a chance to reset and learn, oh, what are some different ways I could approach these fights, or what is a different way I could approach these puzzles? So I'm just excited to see what's coming about from that.
Nice. So it seems like it's encouraging a lot of lateral thinking and really just, because historically I've played a lot of Zelda games, right? Brian, I think you would agree. The biggest thing that, maybe is good and bad about Zelda games is that there is not a lot of creativity of how you approach a fight. I remember playing Twilight Princess, and certain fights, like when you get the giant metal wrecking ball, right? It is explicitly to fight the ice boss for a specific boss in a new area that, like, it's very tied together. So it seems like now there's no right or wrong way to do it. And as the more creative you are, the more dynamic solution. So, I mean, that in itself sounds really, really fun. I mean, I know that was a strength of the last game, so knowing they fleshed that out even more is a good sign. Brian, what about you? What else is, you're a little deeper in than Wes, but like, maybe, I don't know if you can avoid being spoilerish, but like, what else is sucking you in, man? What's been working for you?
I think we got to spoil. Like, this game is too fun, like, not to spoil. Like, I
feel like the gameplay is so cool. Spoilers don't matter, because I'm watching all this shit I've seen on the internet of people making mechs and stuff. So like,
you're gonna figure it out yourself later, and it's still gonna be joyful, and you'll feel good about it. Like, this game is wild in terms of that lateral thinking that you're talking about. Like, you're exactly right in how you describe previous old school Zelda, where it's like, oh, the only way to cross this bridge is to use the grappling hook gun or whatever that you find later in the game, and then you got to go back and then you cross that chasm, whatever. In this game, they're like, here are 4 incredible abilities that feel like game-breaking abilities. They feel like total cheat codes at the beginning of the game, and then here's the massive sandbox of a world. Now go and play. That's basically what's happening here. So that like Ultra Hand ability, where you're combining different objects to create new objects. Like last night, I made an ATV, and I was just driving around like the gloom-covered terrain, which is basically like hazardous terrain. Like, you would die if you tried to walk all over it. But I made an ATV, so that's cool. I made like a spinning flamethrower sensor activated device that I attached to the ceiling of a
Are you playing Little Big Planet right now? This sounds like, you ever play that game Little Big Planet?
Yes.
That is what
this kind of.
This sounds like Little Big Planet, where you're just actually making you're playing Inspector Gadget / Minecraft. Yes. Like, you're describing Minecraft in Little Big Planet more than a Zelda game right now, bro.
I have definitely thought that this is like Zelda meets Minecraft, or like, I was even thinking, I haven't played Fortnite, but I know in Fortnite you build fortifications.
Yeah.
And so like building stuff is a big part of this. Like, what else have I built? I built like a flying glider that has 2 rockets basically attached to it so that it shoots very far. Oh yeah, and like there's another puzzle that like Anna has been couch co-oping with me this whole time because
that's
she's also really
adorable.
fascinated by the engineering possibilities of this. She's a trained engineer. And so like
Oh,
we were trying to figure
gosh.
out how to send a crystal to another island. So we attached a rocket to it, but the rocket isn't enough, right? Because like if it shoots out and it hits something else on the other island, it would just like fall off, right? So what we had to do, we needed another device that stands up. And Anna was like, yeah, and so if it stands up and the rocket goes off at the same time, it's going to have a parabolic flight to the other island. And it fucking worked. It totally worked. Like, I don't know, like, how
Core
they
memory
managed
with
the
your wife
physics. Like, it worked. And then after that, I realized that there was a much simpler solution. I just needed
Carry
to
it.
maneuver the bridge to connect the two islands. So like those sort of combinations are just rampant in this game. There's so much. There's so many different tiny machines you can put together. And then the weapons thing, the fuse ability, you could put two spears together, right? And just have like a 10-foot spear. You could also put the flamethrower on the shield, which I have done. I've also put a laser on my shield. So I can have a sword with a laser on it and a shield with a laser on it. So now I'm double fisting lasers.
Yo, you
so-
chill out. You about to make me buy this game today. Hold on. I'm like,
I think
didn't know
you
could
have
use
to,
weapons.
man.
You can
It
make a
is
laser. I
so
can make a
fun.
laser hammer, basically, if I really
You can
want
make
to.
a laser hammer. You could, I
don't know what
you
that's
could just-
supposed to work like, but I just want it.
You could just put a sword on your shield, so like it's just a pokey shield, like that's cool.
pokey
And then
shield.
those are only two of the abilities. There are two more that are also game breaking. One of them is the ascend ability, which basically allows you to swim upwards into a platform and come out on the other side. So you could be underneath the bridge, ascend upward, and suddenly you're on top of that bridge.
Oh, they showed that in the preview.
Yes. Yeah. That
a
was the
while
thing that
back.
we or a lot of fans
Trying to
had
speculate on,
tried to
yeah.
figure out what is going on there. So like there's this, it's basically a different way to platform, right? You don't have to climb as much as you did in the other game. If you can find an underside, you can go up that way. And that's a really great ability because another new thing they've introduced to the map, right? So the map is still Hyrule from Breath of the Wild 1, but so they've added all these floating islands in the sky. They've added caves throughout the landscape. So in the caves, like to get out of the cave, I'm just gonna use the ascend ability and swim through the earth, and suddenly I'm back on normal ground. And then even below that, there's a level below that called the depths.
That was lowercase Earth, not uppercase Earth. I think.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then there are the depths, which are underneath the earth and which are as big as the normal map. So basically, Breath of the Wild is 2.5 times the size, or Tears of the Kingdom is 2.5 times the size of the Breath of the Wild map. Like, it is huge, very, very huge. And then the last ability, game-breaking ability, that I've gotten so far is it's the time recall ability, which basically means you can select an object and reverse it in time. So like if a boulder is coming at you, you can select that boulder and rewind it, and then it'll roll back up the hill. Or you could even do that with some bad guys.
Oh, I was about to ask, like, can you do it to organic beings too? Just somebody run up to you and slash you, and you just.
It doesn't work on all of them, but I have tried it once where it did happen, and I kind of forgot the circumstances. But so like that's a thing, or like things falling from the sky, which happens often throughout the game. Like they can shoot back upwards, and then you can use them as an elevator, basically.
Can you reverse an Octorok rock back at the Octorok?
I believe so. Yeah,
That's sick.
Definitely. And so there's you have these 4 godlike abilities in the game, and then the game is just telling you like, hey, why not? Give it a shot, see what happens. And usually you're rewarded when you do. And then I think there's a slot for another ability that I haven't even gotten yet. So like who knows what that is? And I'm trying to avoid YouTube videos as much as possible, so I can just kind of enjoy the discovery on my own.
Nice. Well, again, from what I've just seen on social media, Brian, just from clips of the game, the building mechanics seems like it is wild. Like I've seen people make like stealth bombers. I saw somebody make what was essentially a walking person with a fire spewing phallus, and people did not hesitate
Yes.
to go that direction. But
There are a lot of phalluses in
yeah,
the game.
which childish stuff, which silliness aside, like
I
it
put
really
a
does
dildo
feel
on a sword, basically.
unironically. This suddenly turned into Grand Theft Auto, which God, that was a thing in the older games. So yeah, I mean, I can't wait for us to hear more later. As y'all play this game, more of things people figure out, especially since the game is so fresh, right? But I want to open up the door to one critique. So when I was reading critiques about this game, it was all universal appeal, and that's good. And I don't, I recognize this game is amazing, and there's nothing to take away from that. I still, especially for universal acclaim games like this, I like to read some of the harshest reviews just to see, even if this is a bad faith actor, even if they're trolling and being a contrarian. I mean, clearly some of these arguments were genuinely bad faith, but I'm still curious to see, hey, outside of the universal acclaim, what are some issues the game has? And so one critique I read, which again doesn't necessarily reflect how I feel or any substantial group of people feels, but there was some water being held, is that the game felt like a $70 DLC. And when I say that, what I mean is that the graphic system is virtually the same. Many of the assets, enemies, even the original map. Now, granted, they expand the map ridiculously, but I heard the biggest critique is that even menu sounds, things like that, are all recycled from the previous game. First of all, how true is that from people who have played it? Does it matter to you? And yeah, I mean, I guess that's the biggest thing is how do you feel in response to that? There's one other critique, but I want to address this one first of, do you have a problem with them essentially just taking the old game and only building off of it rather than raising the floor of what it was originally?
I didn't have a problem with it so far. It hasn't felt boring or like, oh, they just kind of rehashed it. I think partly because I'm still in the learning phase of like, what are these new abilities that we're having here? And they make certain visual choices that make it feel a little bit different. The shrines look different. Some of the characters are a little bit different. Link, has a different arm now. So I think in some ways it does feel new. I think it's also okay that it doesn't feel 100% new because this is taking place story-wise literally right after, not literally, a few years like after the end of the last game. And so it does make sense to me that, well, if you're in the same world and you're just continuing the same storyline, that even the interface should feel similar, because if it didn't, you'd be like, well, is this actually connected to the last game, right? You're not feeling that connection between the two as a sequel. So I think if the visual language is similar and the same, and a lot of the movement and abilities are the same, that to me, or that they're like inspired by each other, I think that's okay. In this one, I think probably if there was a next game, you'd want to see a maybe a more of a delineation between the series and kind of maybe a different world or a different timeline or something like that. But for there to be two that are similar, I think that's okay. It hasn't bothered me at all.
Yeah, and again, context, right? I'll let you go in just a moment. But context, right? Like previous Zelda games, Nintendo is known for reinventing the wheel just because, right? Like Nintendo will absolutely put out a banger of a Zelda game, release these new cool mechanics in this new world, and then for the next game, start from the ground up and say, okay, that was cool, we're gonna do something. Like we got, Wolf Link and the Twilight world, and they did not touch that again, very intentionally. So again, this isn't a critique, but some people will say, hey, it's been 6 years. Maybe they were expecting like a Twilight Princess Skyward Sword level change rather than, maybe what it was for Super Mario Galaxy 1 to 2, which to your point was a building up of rather than a reinvention of the foundation. But yeah, nonetheless, Brian, what do you think?
Who are these bad faith actors asking about sequels and comparing them to DLCs? Like Then every sequel is a DLC.
So to be clear, that's the most
folks.
extreme version of that. That's like the more extreme version of that argument. But I do think that it's worth having a conversation about. Is the core engine is the same? Does that take away from what this game is good at? Now, clearly, based on the universal acclaim, I'd say no. But I think it's still a conversation worth having.
This is kind of like Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2, right? Where like suddenly like all the mechanics and level design is really refined and the game just takes off. It's kind of like that plus more. And I say that because, sure, it's the same map and all of that's same characters, a lot of same menu things, but refined. But it's also, as I said, 2.5 times bigger. So that's one thing. And the gameplay is completely rehauled because you do not have the same abilities as in Breath of the Wild. You do not have stasis and cryonis or whatever, the thing that
those
made
are just
ice.
Gone, period.
You don't have the bombs that you had in Breath of the Wild. And this time, and in that game, you had to work to get those abilities. In this game, you're just given these 4 new mechanics that, as I said, are game breaking right off the bat. And they completely changed, to me, they completely changed the experience. Like the fact that I'm making all-terrain vehicles in a Zelda game, right? Which is traditionally either you ride a horse or you effing walk. Right, like
no teleport.
Like
maybe
suddenly
a boat that fast travels you maybe to a different region of the map. Maybe
I made a like paddle boat last night. Like I put wooden planks on some big wheel tires and attached it to another plank and put it in water. And those wheels turned the side planks to function as automatic paddles, so that I could traverse over a body of water. Like that is just completely new thinking, new gameplay. All the spatial reasoning, all the mechanical engineering that I'm having to do in this game feels really new and fresh. And to me is the thing that makes the game very, very different. I wouldn't say completely different, but very different. And it gives the whole game the MacGyver feel, or like I feel like Bear Grylls, like man versus nature. This is like Breath of the Wild, right? Like Breath of the Wild, the whole idea was like you're out there on your own in nature, and you got to survive. Like this is that plus more, right? Because now you got to build stuff too, like smart machines, simple machines. And MacGyver your way through this whole world. And I think that, to me, merits the $70 price tag. This is way beyond just a DLC, right? This is way beyond Majora's Mask, which was, I think, the last Zelda game to have a real sequel where they didn't change the setting entirely, right? It was like Ocarina of Time to Majora's Mask, and that was probably more like a DLC. This is like huge new game. This is going to take me a long time. Like, I'll see you in a couple years. Like this is this is kind of monumental.
Also, Brian, again, and I've talked to Mike about this at length. The Mario Galaxy, I love the Super Mario Galaxy 2 comparison because Super Mario Galaxy 2 was extremely well received. It got amazing reviews. Everyone loved it explicitly because it took everything good about 1, refined it, and made it better. In fact, the biggest critique about Galaxy 2 was that the story was a little bit watered down, which you're not playing Mario games for the story.
Yeah, definitely
The
not.
biggest critique was that the game was a little bit too hard, which even I remember. That was one of the few games I got all the stars. And even me as like a competent gamer, I was like, oh my God, this shit is hard. Like, they clearly meant this to be post-in-game, push the game challenges to its absolute limit. So, there's precedent for Nintendo doing this kind of stuff. But, again, it's fun to read some of even the harshest reviews to see, okay, even if the argument as a whole isn't really good, where can you take some of these points? So the other critique I heard about the game was, it kind of ties into the same thing of the passage of time, right? the Switch is old. The Switch has been around for a hot little minute now. Like, what has it been around? 7, 8 years now? Was
I don't know.
Breath of the Wild wasn't
around for a while.
Breath of the Wild wasn't a launch
launch
title,
game.
was it?
I
Was
think
it a launch game?
Yeah.
So the system's 6 years old at the bare minimum. And Nintendo is never known for their high-performing, exactly performance, visual-based games, right? They'd like to be more stylized. I've heard that sometimes the frame rate, this game pushes the Switch's performance to its absolute limits. And coming from someone like me, who maybe I'm a little bit more spoiled playing my PlayStation 5 when it comes to the visual experience, how is this game from a performance perspective? One of the reasons I know you can't amp up the graphics is because they already were pushing the Switch to its absolute limits. Performance-wise, how's this game going for you? Are there any hiccups or frame rate stuff? And more importantly, does it actually take away from your enjoyment? I'm leaning no, but I still want to hear what you have to say.
I haven't noticed any performance hiccups at all. I do wish there was more detail in what they were doing, but because they stylize it, they kind of make it a little bit more like cel-shaded flat a little bit. I think you could kind of hand wave that away as like, well, that was an artistic choice or a design choice, rather than, oh, they were limited by the graphics, and so that's what we got. I think certainly if you gave them more horsepower on the next generation of, whatever Nintendo comes out with, that the designers will take advantage of that, the devs will take advantage of that and model their characters with a little bit more detail. But it honestly, it hasn't been an issue. Everything feels like it's okay. The weights of everything feel good, and it doesn't seem to be frame rate dropping for me personally. I've played both like handheld on the little screen, and I've played it with the dock. So I haven't noticed that. I think I was having an issue with like the buttons not registering when I was trying to get into these fights, but I think that was more an issue of just like wireless connectivity between the controller and the console, not an issue of like the performance, I don't think. So that's it. I don't think that. I do wish there was like more horsepower, but I think we've all gone back to this, that like you don't need to have the best graphics to have a really great game. Like I think people often mistake great graphics for great games, but that's not what makes a game wonderful, right? It's all of the things that you can do within that game and within the constraints of that game, which actually make it the thing worth playing. So like, we've all played old games on old consoles and had a brilliant time, like the old Mario Kart 64. If you go back and watch that, like look at the actual graphics, they're like horrendous compared to today's games. But like it was so much fun, right? Like I mean that's all that matters. Like, is the game enjoyable? Is it fun? Are you getting out of it what you wanted? Like the actual like detail of the hair or whatever, like that is not the reason you go back to a game and continue playing it. Like it's cool at first and you're like, wow, this is really immersive, but beyond that, I mean,
speak for
I
yourself.
hope that
I play for both. I'm not gonna pretend like I didn't boot up Horizon Forbidden West partially to just be like, yo, this game is actually visually astounding. Now the gameplay is obviously the most important part, but
exactly.
I won't pretend like the artistic presentation doesn't still hold value. If anything,
I think
this
it
is
holds
something
value, but it's not like, I think you would agree with this. It's not, that wouldn't be enough to say this is a great game or this is even a good game. If like the visuals were stunning, but the gameplay was a little bit ho-hum, you probably wouldn't go back to it. I mean, like Kenna, the Bridge of Spirits, like it looks fantastic, but everyone talked about the gameplay just being kind of like whatever. And,
yeah, it's mad.
So me giving you a hard time, Wes. All right, I'm gonna have receipts on this next time you criticize CGI in a movie, because we've talked about this before. But about the CGI doesn't look good. I'm like, well, it doesn't matter as long as the other parts are. But what I will give Nintendo,
it does matter, right? It just is not the only thing.
What I'll give Nintendo props for is that they do a good job of knowing that graphics aren't their highest priority. They do lean heavily into having being very stylized, and a lot of that leads to their games aging very well. One of the best decisions they ever made was when they did Zelda Wind Waker, because the cel-shaded style is very timeless, and because it's more about art design than high-powered graphics, you could play that game almost 25 years later and it holds up great because the art style works really well, right? So, I agree about the whole graphics point, but I also still want to give Nintendo props of what has made some of their games work better, especially older ones, is that the stylized art has a timeless feel to it, which is why maybe Ocarina of Time with the polygons doesn't age well in the same way that Wind Waker or even their Sprite 3D games have aged, because they're very intentional about the art design and graphic stuff aside. I want to give them props for that because there are games that don't even have the strongest graphics, and that's fine. But the art design needs to be done to kind of step it up, and Nintendo does a good job of doing that in spades. The same reason Elden Ring was a good game, because the graphics weren't anything amazing, but the art design was so top tier that that's what still drew you in visually. So, got to give Nintendo props where props is due. They have a very timeless visual style for a lot of their games. Like, even Super Mario Sunshine, super old game, but just the art style makes that game look high def, even, again, almost 25 years later. So,
I would say, I think, to argue against myself a little bit, I do wish.
Yes, please do that so we don't have to.
Do your Skip Bayless versus Skip Bayless bid.
Some of the textures and the surfaces, I do wish those had a little bit, not more detail, but like a little bit of variance. It just kind of looks like they just put one texture skin on like the sides of the walls and things like that. That is just like, I know that's a rock, and yet I still wish it just had a little bit more feeling to it to keep like it a little bit more grounded.
Yeah, that's that nitpicky West.
Yeah. So like, sure, they could do more like that, but is that going to stop me from playing the game? Like, nah, it's like it's okay. Like, they do so many other things well that it's good.
What's going to stop Wes is that he doesn't have a Switch.
I know, I'm borrowing my brother-in-law's Switch right now, so we'll see.
Dang, bro. You know what's funny? I was texting Wes the other day because I was like, yo, man, my Switch is in here collecting dust. I'll mail you my Switch so you can just use it indefinitely.
Yeah, but now you're going to keep it.
But now y'all done sold me. Now you make me hype. Look, now that I know you can build mechs and boats and shit, I'm like, ooh, I don't know. That could be enough to... That could be enough to learn. That could be enough to lure me in. I'm like, like it might just turn into me playing Apex and Breath and Tears of the Kingdom. Like, Wes, I really was about to let you hold on to that Switch like for an indefinite amount of time. And
I was planning out my Best Buy order to get Tears of the Kingdom so I could put it on your Switch.
Yeah, and now y'all I'm like, ooh man, something good better come out in the next couple of weeks to keep me occupied because you might not get that Switch player. Okay, so we talked about some of the bad faith critiques. It doesn't seem like they're real deal breakers for you, Brian, in terms of the visual. I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
I mean,
can I ask you what your fuse ability would be? So this game has this ability to fuse different weapons together. In real life, if you had this ability, I feel like, Brian, are you fusing together your skillet and your knife for your zombie fight into one like knife skillet, or
no,
what are you doing here?
I'm fusing my microwave with my toilet, so just make things more efficient for myself.
Are you gonna heat up your poop and turn it into food? What are we doing here?
I think you got the order of operations on that like wrong. Like, come on, PEMDAS player.
Mine is also food related. I'm combining my Pilot G2 pen that I use for school, but I'm fusing it with a pizza maker so that I can just write out.
What?
I could just make, when I'm writing, I could just squeeze out a little bite of pizza roll and boom, pop it in my mouth. I got endless supply of pizza for me all the time. I just need pizza in my life more often.
I'm with you, Brian. Like, what the hell is wrong with this man? This man decided to make a pizza juice pen dispenser.
Yes, not juice. No, I want it to like write out and like it just be a fully made, like strip of pizza.
What?
It sounds sad. It's like you just need to fuel up while you're still working, so you never stop working.
Capitalism at its finest.
I feel like there's a more efficient way. I feel like you could just write with your pen and just have a microwave adjacent to you heating up your pizza, and that is actually less work than having to draw your food out.
No, you just well, maybe you just
it's your fusion, player. It's your fusion. Then, do what you want to do.
And then the pizza. But I kind of like the idea. You write the pizza. You could write out the shape of like your name, and then you have a pizza in the shape of your name. Like this is cool.
I would love a Brian pizza,
right?
Covered with pepperoni.
I know what I want though. Fusion thing. You? I want to fuse. Can it be more than one thing or more than two things?
Yeah,
do it.
I want to fuse all of just like any liquid product that I have to use for any context. I want it to just be fused into like just like a all liquid, if that makes sense, like a all purpose. So
like the one that like Head and Shoulders makes, like 2-in-1 or 3-in-1 body wash, face wash.
But like
soap, man. We all know that's just soap.
Okay,
you can wash your dishes with that too.
Yes,
Pert
but
plus,
like
my man.
Yes, but
we
not
that.
Yes, but not like that because first of all, just give you a little heads up. women will clown you for using any kind of 3-in-1. Like one time somebody
Speaking from experience.
No, like, first of all, I don't use 3-in-1, but one time somebody made a joke about men using 3-in-1. Like it was like a joke about why are you using 3-in-1? And then I made a face that was like oh, there's something wrong with 3-in-1. I was like, I don't use the 3-in-1, but I didn't know that was like, not cool. But
People love to hate.
No,
Hate for no reason.
No, I get it. You want to have something
time-saving.
No, but it's like how you gonna use the same stuff you wash your hair that you wash everything else with. All these different stuff. Anyways, I want like a universal thing that I can use as like toothpaste, hair gel, styling, shampoo, just a universal, just a universal liquid or jar or something.
Hair, man.
Yeah,
maybe a little Colgate.
No, it just
Get
needs
those
to
tips
do.
Up.
Yeah, but it needs to just magically do whatever the intended effect is. So like, I need this to be toothpaste right now. Bet. Okay, I need to use this to get my hair nice and shiny. Okay, also bet. Oh, I need to use this as like some deodorant. Also, just it does everything all in one. And I just have a tube of just all in one. Because right now I'm in a space where, I got long hair, so I got to like style my hair a little bit. I have a beard. All the different stuff I need to just make myself the sexy beast I am leaving the day. It starts to take up a lot of space. And,
Would that include like your cleaners? Like, you trying to clean up the kicks or you're trying to
why not?
Wipe
Is
up
there
the kitchen?
Lysol in there?
Sure, why not? Like, as long as I don't get the negative, the idea is you don't get the negative impacts of it. So if I can also use this stuff, just a universal spray, just a spray that just does everything.
I love it.
Give me that. Use that for me.
You're going to be the first dude at the club with flavor crystals in your hair.
I want to hate on this idea, but I kind of like it. I really do. I'm in favor.
Because it's dope.
Let's go into business.
All right.
Yeah. Shark Tank. I'm investing.
Thank you. All right. Last one. So we were talking about sleep and this game costing you sleep, and maybe I'll give like an off the base answer for a different game. But what is the most sleep that this game has cost you? And also listeners back home who are playing this game, when you listen to this, send us, hit us up on socials. What is the longest session? How much sleep have you lost? What in your life has faltered because this game has just occupied a disproportionate amount of your time and space? Brian.
Shout out. Oh, go ahead, Brian.
Well, I definitely have bloodshot eyes right now. But I've been sleeping like 2 a.m. every night. This game is, and I spend my waking hours thinking about it. I'm like, what if I attach this rocket to this sword? Like, will I fly when I swing the sword? Is that gonna happen? Like, it's occupying a lot of time, I will say. However, I kind of remember when I first started playing Elden Ring and being like locked on that a little harder.
That shit was rough.
because like Elden Ring has that thing where like you die a lot and then and it has huge ramifications, so you got to go at it again. And again, and again, and again. I think Tears of the Kingdom, it's a more of a joyful game that you like you can play a relaxed style, you could play like a aggressive style. Like it allows for so much more. So I think that said, I can actually tell myself like, oh shit, it's 2:00. I got to go to sleep. So I'm there with it, but who's to say? The deeper I get into the game, maybe I'm just gonna be hooked on our Jolt Cola IV style and just power through this in 1 week. Who knows?
Wes.
Yeah, I think because you're a little bit undirected, that makes sense, right? Like you don't have to like do any particular thing. You're just kind of like walking around, and in some ways that feels like, oh, it's like I can put this down, or like I just did my exploring for the day, like I'm good, and it's not like, oh, I had to defeat this particular boss. Like you may have played for an hour and a half and not run into any kind of real bad guys that are require more than a few swings of your boulder hammer, or whatever. So shout out to my friend Wee has been playing his game. He said he was staying up till like 5 a.m. and he was in the middle of a medical conference. Like this dude's a doctor. And
oh no!
Well, they know how to not sleep.
Yeah, he was supposed to, that's true, but he was supposed to be at this conference and instead just decided to play the game.
Good choice.
5 a.m.
Good choice.
And then
You put my son on blast.
Yeah, I know. I may be outing him.
I was loud capping. My son dry snitching hard. Shout out to my friend by name who's supposed to be at a medical conference up till 5 a.m.
He still went to the medical conference.
Man, his peers probably just like, all right now.
Like how many Wiis attended a medical conference last week? Like this is. I think you could pinpoint this guy.
Someone could find him. Someone could definitely figure out who he is.
Doxing my son.
I have been not losing any sleep, actually, and this has nothing to do with the game. The game is really fun. I am running on like fumes. I don't even think I have any fumes left. The teaching gig has been rough for the past like 4 weeks. Not and partly of my own choosing and partly expected. I mean, we just finished like AP testing and stuff like that, and I've been.
You teach AP classes, bro. I don't know why. Yeah. I mean, I know why, but
I love it. It's
why?
It's cool.
Did he give you extra for doing AP classes? Like, you don't got to answer that,
paid,
but like...
You get paid a little bit extra, but that's not what it is. I mean, and in some ways, honestly, teaching AP classes are not easier, but like more rewarding because you get to just go into so much more depth and the kids get to like have such like deeper discussion. That's another conversation.
I did like DBQs. I will say I took AP history.
You like DBQs?
DBQs were kind of fun. Document-based questions. Document-based questions. It was a way to teach students how to read articles, multiple articles to make a point about a larger like theme or topic. So not just, do this, read, take the information, synthesize it, connect the dots, and then come up with your own original thought for whatever the prompt is.
And, me in high school, I was not about, like, let me do original thoughts. I was more like, just give me the answer. I'll give you the answer. Like, what do you want
to
hear?
Tell me what you want to hear.
Exactly.
Chat GPT.
So,
I wanted to be right. I'm like, oh, yeah, y'all giving me a soapbox? Ooh, y'all about to hate y'all. Ooh, y'all done effed up now. I'm about to go into some stuff.
Reaching deep into his bag, pulling out the symbolism.
Fools.
The historical references. Yeah. But so I am literally out of it. I was also doing national board certification, which is this process where you got to like talk about like how you're teaching and like what you're teaching and like why you're teaching it this way, and then reflect on how it went and like talk about what you would do differently next time. And that was due this past week.
What?
It was due at 11:59 p.m. on this past Wednesday, and you have basically like a year to get it finished. Like you could literally finish this in November, submit. I think that the window to submit opens in January. Like you could have submitted this in January and be done with it. My dumbass waited until, the hardest part of the year, AP testing time, which is like just like pedal to the metal. Like I was tutoring after school, lunchtime, Saturdays. And, I'm like, let me do it now. Like that, that's the best time to do this part of the project. So I procrastinated and I submitted at 11:06 on Wednesday. So I had a cool 53 minutes to spare or something like that.
That's got to be 90% of the applicants though, right? Like
I bet you it's a lot, but I don't think everybody waits until like the last day, because they also warn you like, hey, if we have system issues in terms of downloading and stuff or uploading and stuff like that, like that's on you.
Hey, if we have an issue, really? It's on you, man.
Yeah. So they're like, we encourage you to submit things early. The system may slow down with several candidates uploading their materials. And I didn't have to do this yet because I'll do it next year. Some people have to upload videos. So they're uploading like 500 megabyte files of their teaching in their classroom. So that can really if they don't have the server space for it and the bandwidth for it, like that could actually bog down the system pretty badly. Luckily, everything went fine. I submitted it. I was uploading PDFs, so it wasn't that big a deal. It got submitted. We'll see. You don't find it until December. How you do? Nobody wants to hear about this. What I was saying is, I have no energy.
Today. Wes is gonna do it today. That was what we put in the chat. Wes Logic.
I'm so tired that like I cannot. Even though this game is really good, I've not been able to stay up. I've been passing out at like 10:30 every day this week. But it has still been a blast. So that was a long way of saying don't take that as a judge of how engrossing this game is. It's very good.
Even sleep deprived.
Yeah. But hey, that national board, you're the Jimmy Butler of board certification. My son was coasting and just like, it's time to turn it up. Bet, say less.
Yeah.
Say less.
Here's my 20 pages in 1 week.
No, what does it know? Wes doesn't have that dog in him. Dogs have that Wes in him.
Out of context, that sounds disgusting.
Stop! Why you had to ruin what was some hard ass line?
What just happened?
You had to ruin this. I haven't been playing this game, but in terms of games that have just in the past absorbed my life, surprisingly enough, Monster Hunter World, when that game came out, good lord, and that's one of Capcom's most successful games. But that was my first Monster Hunter. But that was just Brian, it's kind of more like Elden Ring in that you're basically just doing like a long
played the
boss
demo.
fight. Yeah, so every fight is literally a boss fight, but it's one of those games where you have to get all your resources, prep, do the fight against the monster. The fight really might take you a solid 20 to 25 minutes just because the nature of the gameplay loop, and you might just lose at the very end of that fight, and you gotta just do it again. And you with your boys, and it's 4 or 5 of y'all, and you're hunting parts, and you might kill a monster, and it didn't drop the rare part you need to craft some other dope gear.
So do it again.
You do it again. And oh my God. I mean, the game was fun, so grinding and hunting and stuff was fun, but good Lord, that game could not be played casually. So if you're just in the heat of it and you lose to a fight at the last second, you're just like, oh my God, it's 1 a.m., it's 1:30. If I do this fight again, that's going to be another 30 to 45 minutes at least. Assuming I win, I might lose, and you might get close to winning, and then it's a whole that game. And then any game with a hard boss, you lose, your ego is hurt, you take it. I don't know about y'all. When I lose to a boss, I take it personal. I'm like, this is an indictment against me as a person. I can't let this disrespect stand. I refuse to go about the rest of my day having known I just got my ass beat. Nah, we're doing this now. So I lost a lot of sleep.
Sounds like me
Monster
and the Lakers
Hunter.
right now.
Ooh. Unlike the Lakers, though, it sounds like Savon had a chance even when he lost.
Yeah, like I was fighting because I stood a chance, not because there was no hope. Like I was fighting because I'm like, I could beat this thing, and sometimes I would. But
That is not a great comparison. The Lakers have had a chance, and Denver's just made the shots, man.
Denver's just a better team, bro. Like,
They've
we
been a
making
better
all these
team.
excuses. Like, it's no
there's
shame against the
excuses,
Lakers.
But the Lakers have had a chance. Denver just pulled it out.
Yeah.
Denver did it. They did what they needed to do.
Denver had a
Props to
chance
them.
too, and Denver's just
Jamal Murray
this is-
took it to another level.
Yeah.
They did.
That's a huge difference maker.
Yeah, Lakers is good. Like, who are you supposed to guard? They have all their starting lineup of 3-level scorers. Like, I'm not even mad at the Lakers for losing because I'm just like, yo, the Nuggets are a better team than y'all. Like, there's just no shame in losing to the better team. Like, it's not like, oh my God, the Lakers could have. Like, yeah, coulda, shoulda. If my grandma had wheels, should be a bike, all that good shit. Y'all lost, and it's okay. Sometimes you gotta just take your lick, to the chin.
The Nuggets definitely feel like Tears of the Kingdom to their Breath of the Wild bubble version
Bubble self.
of themselves.
Yeah, they just like, hey, we're gonna take everything we good about and be better across the board in every regard. I'm like, oof. Even LeBron said he was like, yeah, they're just better in every way than when they were last time we played. And I'm like, at least you know. At least you know what you're getting into. But let's wrap up our Tears of the Kingdom discussion. Any other thoughts about this game? Things you want to share? People who are planning. Like, what are some final thoughts that y'all have, or just things people should know while we're talking about it?
I'm good. Brian?
I think one thing that we haven't mentioned is the story and how this game actually feels a little darker than Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild had kind of like a shininess to it, right? Tears of the Kingdom, I mentioned going down below, underground, into the depths that they're called. The depths are pitch black, by the way. So a lot of the times you are just roaming around in absolute darkness, and then you might get crept up upon by some bad guys. And then if you do, turn on some lights, you realize that it's covered in the gloom, as the game calls it, which is like a fleshy, blood-like substance that is all over the terrain, and if you touch it, you will get hurt and probably die.
Wasn't something like that in the last game?
Yeah, I mean, they had something like that. I forget what it was called, but it didn't look as flesh-like. It didn't look as disgusting. And so they also have monsters covered in this sort of thing. I saw a 2-headed dragon last night, which I had never seen in Breath of the Wild before. There's another monster which is like the flesh-like thing, but with hands coming out of the ground with eyeballs on them, and they
To be clear, listeners, he's saying flesh-like.
Not to be confused with fleshlight. Which is a different
y'all
fusion of objects.
Y'all two can't help yourselves. Y'all the oldest ones in here, and I feel like I'm in middle school right now.
Well, like dirty old man, like that thing is real. So anyway, like what Tears of the Kingdom actually reminds me of, in some ways, is a nod to Elden Ring, right? Like these depths.
They're nodding back to each other, back and forth?
Like Elden Ring is a nod to Breath of the Wild. called Death of the Wild, and then now Tears of the Kingdom is like using like bits of Caelid, you know that the place
the
in
rot,
map?
the rot and all
the
that
rot,
stuff.
Like it feels a little bit similar to that, which is just kind of funny. But it definitely has a darker feel for the game story wise, and I'm excited to learn more. I'll check back in when I'm logged 100 more hours.
Nice. So
Should we wrap up there?
yeah, we can wrap up there. So this was our Tears of the Kingdom discussion. You know, this game is really, really popular right now. I have a lot of friends who are playing it. So definitely our listeners who are playing it, please reach out to us on socials and give us some of your feedback about what you agree with, disagree with. I'm probably going to end up getting this game. But I think what I'm most excited for really is I think now I'm excited less about the internet piece and more so if I start playing it, I'm going to talk to other friends of mine playing it. And I'm definitely going to be curious about just how are we, like, this is one of those games where I want to talk to Mike about how he's playing it so that I can give him, give him shit about us taking completely opposite approaches. And I already know, like,
totally.
Mike probably has like the most meta online. Hey, if you do this trivializes half the stuff. And then I'm just stuck to some specific. No, I want to do it this specific way. And if I can't do it this way, I don't want to do it at all. Or I'll get my ass beat till it happens this specific way that's cool to me. But I sense that already being really fun of saying, hey, Mike, I'm at this part. And he's like, oh, how you doing? And I'm like, oh, well, I built a low rider and put some horns on the shit and I put rims on it. And he's like, oh, I put wheels. I put like wheels on a log and it just got me there. And I'm like, oh, you didn't put like rims and those shiny extra shit on it? He's like, no, I just wanted to get there practically. Yeah, and I'm just like, you didn't like, but no rims? You didn't put 22s? Like if I could make an ATV in the game, Brian, I'm putting rims on it. I'm like, okay, what's the cutest? What's the most fire way I can make this thing? That can't just be functional. It has to be drippy.
Oh, so, you got my imagination going right now. I'm gonna put some wagon wheels on an ATV with some rocket
put a flag
boosters.
of some sort. I gotta have.
So you could get wagon wheels as your rims? Oh yeah, see shit like that. Yeah,
yes,
I gotta get this joint. Anyways, this was fun. Can't wait to hear more about the game and. Yeah, we'll wrap it up there. Follow us on social, share it with your friends. Later, folks.
Hit us up in the DMs at confidently_pod on Instagram. See you later.
Zonai, bye-bye.